Welcome to EUPrivacyForAll, Session 11 on GDPR, Data Processing Principles, Article 5. What was already posted online and what is to come? Article 5 on the principles relating to processing of personal data was finally retained in the definitive numbering. The key provision in GDPR regarding principles relating to personal data processing is Article 5. As already stressed, all the principles laid down in the Directive are also laid down here: lawfulness, fairness and transparency, purpose limitation, data minimization, and accuracy. Additional principles were worded in a different and more specific way, that is to say, storage limitation, integrity and confidentiality, and most of all, the crucial principle laid down in GDPR, that is to say, accountability. The key principle of lawfulness of processing is set in Recital 39. It lays down that the principle of transparency is a core pillar of such lawfulness, and that any information and communication relating to the processing of those personal data should be easily accessible and easy to understand, and that clear and plain language is used. It is also made clear that natural persons should be made aware of risks, rules, safeguards, and rights in relation to the processing of personal data, and most of all, how to exercise their rights in relation to such processing. Additionally, personal data should be processed only if the purpose of the processing could not reasonably be fulfilled by any other means. Other provisions on lawfulness in the GDPR are set in Recital 44, 46, 63, and 40. In the latter, it is laid down that in order for processing to be lawful, personal data should be processed on the basis of the consent of the data subject concerned or some other legitimate basis. Currently, the Directive lays down in Recital 9 that the general conditions governing the lawfulness of data processing could be laid down by Member States in specific national provisions. It is also made clear that whereas any processing of personal data must be lawful and fair to the individuals concerned, it is a core issue for the data controller to demonstrate such lawfulness. Indeed, whereas the processing of personal data must equally be regarded as lawful where it is carried out in order to protect an interest which is essential for the data subject's life, it is also in order to be lawful that the consent of the data subject or the necessity for the conclusion or the performance of a contract or the performance of a task carried out in the public interest or the legitimate interests of a natural or legal person would be the basis for such a lawful processing. Article 5 stresses that Member States shall determine more precisely the conditions under which the processing of personal data is lawful. And 6, laying down that Member States shall provide that personal data must be processed fairly and lawfully. What should accountable data controllers get prepared for? Basically, keep on implementing the Directive core principles of lawfulness and fairness. Also, not further processing data in a way incompatible with the initial purposes for which the data were initially collected. Tightly frame further processing for archiving purposes in the public interest or scientific and historical research purposes or statistical purposes. Keep on only processing data that are adequate, relevant, and limited to what is necessary. This is a little bit new. Take every reasonable step to erase or rectify inadequate data. Of course, this obligation existed in the Directive, but now it becomes a key obligation for data controllers. As much as de-identification whenever direct identification is not needed anymore. Keep on using appropriate technical or organizational measures to ensure security. And finally, be ready to demonstrate compliance, that is to say, to meet the principle of accountability. Finally, the key question is to know how accountability will be assessed. Will it be mainly based on technical and organizational measures taken, on the documentation provided in case of audit or inquiry, or on the processes put in place?